All right. I'm gonna wait for Bryant to get in here, and then I'm already on. It's on top of it. Let's get him in. What's up, man?
What's up, pal? How's it going?
Oh, it's going. It's going.
Or not going?
It's not going. Yeah. Um, when do you guys have any idea when y'all are gonna be able to start getting back into the gym?
Um, no, not really. So he announced, I think a few days ago that we're like the phase four. You see all these phases that every
Mm-hmm.
place is doing. They actually put us as the last phase, phase four. So and we're like an hour from the city.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be bunched in with what the
Yeah.
city does probably. So I'm gonna take a wild guess, probably not until July.
Ouch, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely hurts. I mean, our situation's a little better than like most gyms, as you know, I work a full-time job still, and so does my fiance.
Yeah.
So our situation's a little better. And then, just like every other gym, we rented out equipment. We were
Mm-hmm.
already big online before we opened the gym, so that just continued. And you know, yeah, basically like
Yeah,
that.
that's been a big adjustment for me because my gym was primarily built on, me opening up my gym, people coming in, me getting one client at a time. So I've
Yeah,
learned a lot through this process, and I've been pretty jealous of some of you guys that had that foothold on the online stuff, and now just seeing the importance of it. Yeah, man, that's
yeah,
that's good though. I'm glad that y'all are stable, and at least that allows y'all to be able to know that you can get through this, and you're going to be able to open up when everybody starts to feel safe and more comfortable.
yeah. That's what I would rather have. I'd rather
Yeah,
have us open and like, more people feel safe and not have the threat of reclosing than
yeah.
to open too soon and then close in, September or October or
Hmm.
something like that. So I'd rather
Yeah,
I'd rather
that's
have that.
that's what I'm really nervous about right now because we got orders that we can open up to 25% capacity May 18th. And I'm afraid we're just going to see this like climb in numbers and then everything's going to get shut back down. Or we're just trying to like run a gym at 25% for like the next 6 months. You know,
Yeah.
I would almost rather just grind through it like and push it out to the summer or something like that and just make sure that we can kind of get back to normal activity. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I sent out a survey to like all my athletes last night, because we're just now getting to the point where, in the next week and a half, we're going to be opening up the gym again. And it was like, how nervous are you about going back to the gym? Will you get back in day one and all that? And it's actually pretty 50-50 right now. 50-50 or
Yeah.
about, yeah, I'm comfortable getting back at it. The rest are like, probably going to wait at least until June, July and see how things go.
Yeah, I think like when we open back up, I mean, if we open sooner than like July, what I was gonna suggest anyway is that if you already have an at-home situation with
Mm-hmm.
weights, just continue doing that, and then the people who don't have that, you can come in and like because you helped with the process of us opening. In a sense, we have key card entry. So
Mm-hmm.
that kind of helps the situation of spreading out the times for people to come in. You
Yeah.
could, we could just tell them, come in off hours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. That helps a lot. That's essentially how we're opening back up is I'm having to like just schedule everybody.
yeah, yeah,
So,
that's the tough part too, is like scheduling people. A lot of people, we're not in like China or anything where we just weightlift. A lot of people have full-time
yeah.
jobs, so it's really hard for people to kind of schedule their training in a sense because they work in 9 to 5 or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's gonna be really hard to limit those times right around like 5 p.m.
Yeah,
That's when
for sure.
that's when like 80% of our clients come in.
Same here, same here. Especially because our gym's a smaller size. We're just a weightlifting gym, so
Yeah.
it's definitely going to be hard. I think people just have to be responsible.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting for sure. Um, but I think everybo's tired of hearing me talk about COVID. So let's get into some like weightlifting questions. So I had a few questions prior to, but your athletes, man, they did a great job at asking a bunch of really good questions, and so I think we should jump on and target and hit some of those.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They definitely do some good work.
And one that's reoccurred a few times with me that also came up in the questions that your athletes threw out there that I haven't really addressed on any of these IG lives or anything like that is the training around injury, staying motivated during those times, and just kind of talking about that process of when you do get injured, how to go about that and what to do to be able to continue to like become a better weightlifter and stick with the process.
Sorry, my internet went in and out. You
Yeah,
were
no
talking
worries.
about injury?
Yeah. So let's start with kind of your approach or your thoughts on athletes kind of training through injury or during a time of injury, anything like
Yeah,
that.
so obviously the first part is like defining injury.
Hmm.
Injury to me, coming, from playing college football, baseball my whole life and things like that. Injury means you can't really do anything at all on that body part that's injured, or the knee or the shoulder. Being hurt is, you can do some stuff but not at the capacity that
Hmm.
you normally would. um so being injured, what I would do is just train around it. If you're injured and you can't do anything at all, try to find something similar that doesn't affect the injury, um, that still gives you the same a similar outcome. um, and then also focus on other weaknesses, such as, like, if it's a knee injury, focus on some upper body work, some stability work, things like that. So the main thing is to not stop training,
Yeah.
continue to show up to the gym. I think when you stop training, it's kind of when you get lazy. um, you end up retiring or not coming
Hmm.
back or something like
Or
that.
you
So
take just like a huge break and then you feel like you're starting from scratch. Yeah.
yeah, and then that doesn't do the injury good anyway. So
Yeah.
you might as well do something that is a weakness that maybe you don't really address as much, because you're in the normal day-to-day training of snatch, clean and jerk, and squatting. Um, and address those smaller weaknesses. It could even be just, upper body mobility if it's a knee injury or something like that.
Yeah. I sometimes find that there's there's a lot to actually benefit from kind of going through those time periods because you most athletes, like you said, aren't full-time athletes. So we have to consolidate the programming into like the most important things.
Yeah.
And which means sometimes we don't get a chance to spend a lot of time in other areas, which might be like developing some additional mobility and hitting some of the smaller muscle groups in the upper body and stuff like that. And so sometimes when you go through that injury, especially if it's like a longer injury, and you have the chance to like maybe focus on some areas that we usually don't have a whole lot of time to, I find that a lot of times when we get back to being able to do the full movements, they start moving better and they look better even afterwards.
Yeah, even like in the fact of just showing up to the gym and studying other people's technique, or just
Hmm.
going on YouTube and studying technique of similar weightlifters with your proportions, um,
Yeah.
can always help in when you come back and learning new technique and figuring stuff out.
Yeah, I like how you said that. Study other athletes with similar proportions.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
not
because
everybody's going to lift like a Chinese athlete.
exactly. I was gonna
Yeah,
say this. I was gonna say the same thing. Me, you obviously seen me. Me studying a Chinese athlete would not
yeah.
do me any good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is one thing that I definitely notice people with injuries when they're not able to snatch and clean and jerk, they spend a lot of time watching videos, which
Yeah,
is actually really, really good. I
it is.
think, it's surprising that connection that the body can still make to the lift by just seeing it on a regular basis. So I
Yeah, and
think that's a good point to make sure you're still kind of studying the sport too.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Learning new things.
Yeah, and I like how you separated out that idea of injury and hurt, because hurt just means you just need to pull back a little bit,
Yeah,
So
we all go through phases of being hurt.
yeah,
If you're training at an elite level, you're gonna be hurt.
yeah. There's the idea that you're going to be able to throw weight on your body repeatedly and something not get tweaked or slightly injured or slightly hurt. That's there's no way you're going to be able to do that.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that just goes with playing any sport. Now, you could just exercise and probably somewhat, avoid these additional aches and pains, but for most people, they're trying to play the sport of weightlifting. You're going to push your body. There's going to be points where you have to push your body.
Yeah, of
There's going
course.
to be points where it's going to hurt. And so the idea that there's not going to be any pain in the sport, I think is kind of ridiculous. But
Exactly.
I think that's the hard thing, though, is defining whether this pain is something that is going to be a eventually an injury or not. And so my approach has always been like, if pain shows up, we are going to back off of it almost right away, and then kind of see how it goes. So, hey coach, my knee's kind of bothering me today. I'm gonna be like, okay, let's lay off of it today. Let's hit some other things, and then tell me how it feels tomorrow. And sometimes they lay off of it, and within a day or two, they're back to doing everything normal.
Yeah,
Where other times they don't tell you anything, and they just grind and grind and grind, and then all of a sudden they're like, hey coach, my knee doesn't function
yeah,
anymore. And I'm like, why didn't we have this conversation when it first started hurting? And
yeah,
so I think it's good to have that ability to address when something hurts, because then I think we can prevent it from becoming a injury. But but you're right. That doesn't always mean that everything that hurts is also an injury.
yeah, yeah. And it's kind of like you can even push up your deload a week or whatever it
Yeah,
was. And it's also just that communication, like you said. Is it just being sore, hurt,
hmm,
or is it an injury? And
yeah,
just knowing the difference and understanding where you're at helps.
yeah, absolutely. And that's a good point. A lot of times it's just your body is begging for that deload, and it might just mean, hey, we're not going to finish out this week. Let's just go ahead and deload,
Yeah,
and then they're able to get back at it in a week.
yeah,
And yeah, and so, but again, I think that comes with a good ability to one, communicate with your coach, and two, just have that understanding of your own body and knowing when your body's going to feel more beat up. Like
yeah.
the if you deload every fourth week, probably that third week you're probably going to feel pretty beat up.
Exactly,
you know,
exactly.
yeah. Um, cool. And then let's say like also the motivation side of kind of getting through that, and the ability to stay motivated. And then I think that also kind of rolls into like right now, athletes going through this not having a gym, or even like really knowing what event to train for. Have you tried doing anything different, or been talking to your athletes, or gotten any feedback on trying to keep them motivated, and if they're losing motivation and things like that?
So what we actually came up with, because obviously I still train, I don't just coach right now. So
Hmm.
when this actually hit and we had to close the gym, it put me in like a 2 week funk. I backed down. I barely even did anything. And with my job too, seeing it at my job, and it definitely hit me pretty hard with not having people around,
Hmm.
all that stuff. So I think what got me back into it, honestly, was just being accountable. That's why I've
Yeah.
posted more videos than I ever have during this thing. Just
Yeah,
being,
it's been cool seeing because you don't see too many people right now being able to go to the gym and lift.
yeah,
And seeing you go into your gym and lift, even though it's alone,
yeah,
or with your wife, which is nice too.
yeah,
Um, that's that's motivating because it also kind of like I can't wait till I get back to being able to do that.
yeah,
That's cool
exactly.
that
And
you're doing that.
that's kind of what we came up with was myself and my fiance was like, let's post videos. Like we don't normally post videos because I'm the type where I want to highlight my athletes and highlight
Hmm.
my coaching and not my individual accomplishments. So we don't usually post videos, but now I think posting videos when most people can't work out or they're working out in a garage, so you're scrolling through Instagram and you can see somebody else working out and grinding
Yeah,
just like you are. I think that helps. That's what we came up with. Like I said, we were always in constant contact with our athletes anyway. So staying in contact even more. Like if they text you, obviously if you're at dinner or something like that, answer after, but try to answer as soon as possible. Try to keep
yeah,
that open line of communication as much as possible. Also, just reminding them of the goal. Like, just
hmm.
because this pandemic hit doesn't mean that it ruins the whole year. At least not yet. Um,
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least at least not yet. There's
yeah,
still meets planned. I posted goals for our team at the beginning of the year, and I reposted them during this pandemic, and
yeah. It's
we
good.
still have the same goals of I think it was like sending a team to a national meet, and winning the state championships, male and female. That's supposed to be in October, so just posting the goals that we are still continuing to strive for.
Yeah,
I think just reminds people. I think that'll help you get through this quarantine too. Obviously, maybe right now your goals have slowed down, but understand that once this is over, no one's going to hear the excuse that you had 3 months off so you couldn't do something.
yeah,
So
yeah. And this is going to eventually pass.
yeah,
It's just, yeah, and you're right. Do you want to let it pass and then be 3 months behind everybody, or do you want to take this time to, take advantage of this time that we normally don't get? I mean,
no,
a lot of my athletes are competing almost every 12 to 18 weeks, and there's not a whole lot of chances where you're like, all right, we're not going to compete till December, you
yeah,
know, and
exactly.
and so I think it peaked a little bit excitement. I can definitely tell right now they're starting to itch to want to like get back into the gym and interact with each other. Like I see it more now than, and I think it's because we're starting to see that window of the gym getting close to opening back up. So I think it's like
Yeah,
that getting close to the end of the school year kind of thing. The
yeah, yeah,
senioritis kind of
yeah,
coming in, but um, but as soon as this happened, I adjusted all the programming and really went to like a lot of like tempo work and high volume work and almost like a
yeah,
bodybuilding template,
yeah,
and incorporated a little bit more conditioning and stuff like that. So a lot of them really liked that. They're like, okay, I actually feel really fit right now. I
yeah,
feel like I'm in shape,
yeah,
as opposed to like the lazy weightlifter that you can just like move a heavy single.
yeah. Every three
So,
minutes.
so they've enjoyed that a little bit too, and I think that's good to keep putting out there though. Hey, we still have goals for this year. Don't forget about those. Don't let that backslide.
Exactly. And we did the same thing, changed, we emailed everybody to find out what equipment they had and
Hmm.
we developed programs around it, even if it's just doing 95 pounds for as many squats as possible in one set.
Yeah, yeah.
Anything is better than nothing. And I think everyone went through that funk in May, I believe it
Hmm.
was. And now people are understanding their expectations of they're on in quarantine training in their garage or by themselves or with a broomstick. And they understand that doing this work now will help you come back better when this does end.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, because we still have a handful of athletes that don't have any equipment at all. They're just doing body weight stuff, but just like you said, I think making sure that they continue to train and exercise, and we're able to develop some of those um, athletes that don't have any equipment. We're able to get their conditioning up a little bit, and then we're just like hammering their core and upper body, and
Yep.
then just rehabbing their lower body, which again is something that we don't always have the benefit of being able to do in just a normal training cycle. So I'm really
Yeah.
interested to see what our athletes are going to look like when they get back into the gym and start
Yeah.
moving around. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a few that have been just taking this time to sit around and just drink heavily.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll
I've
be
I've
sure
had
to.
I've had a few extra beers
Yeah, yeah,
than
yeah.
normal.
So it'll be fun to point fun at them when all the other athletes are in shape and they're struggling to get back. So we'll have
Yeah.
to shame them a little bit.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Cool, man. So a couple other good questions that they had were like training tactics for beginner athletes and new athletes. Do you have a systematic approach? Do you kind of do it based on, your own judgment? Like what's kind of your approach with getting in a new athlete and then tactics for
Yeah.
teaching them the lifts and programming?
Yeah, so it all depends on their background.
Hmm.
Most of the athletes, because we just opened the gym in October, so we were mainly online. So most of the athletes I received were usually CrossFit background or background from another coach. Um, so it really depends. If I get a new athlete with no background at all, we run them through an on ramp. The on ramp is basically 5 sessions long, scheduled however you want, personal trained. It's an hour a session, either with myself or my fiance. And we basically go over each individual lifts and some of the accessory movements with those lifts, one at a time. So one day will be snatch,
Hmm.
one day will be clean, one day will be jerk, one day will be back squat, one day will be front squat, and we'll go over some of the accessory movements they might see early on.
Hmm.
Um, and then that's how we would usually start. So if it's a CrossFit CrossFit athlete coming to us, I usually stick to a pretty simple way. We usually always start them with a 3-day program, usually an hour session a day, and we usually always don't really focus on their numbers coming in. If their numbers show that they're weak in the squat, or if their numbers show that they're really strong but lack in technique, we pretty much will always start with technique work.
Hmm.
Always. I think that's the best way to do it, best way to get them to adjust to the program. Um, Obviously, there'll still be squats, there'll still be
Yeah.
pulling, but the best way to get them to adjust, I feel like, is to start with technique work, um, and start with as few sessions as possible, 3 days a week, you know,
Hmm.
for 12 weeks or whatever it is, and then maybe add a fourth day or add a fifth day and longer sessions, and um, start slow, because I think myself and a few people probably have started weightlifting, and you go and do Smoloff, or you go and do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know the hardest catalyst program ever, or something like that, and it's kind of an ass backwards approach, and
Yeah.
it can hurt you in the long run. So
Hmm.
start slow, understand that you're starting slow, you're still going to see gains because you're new, and just slowly build up to it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's usually definitely the hardest part is to make sure that they're pumping the brakes a little bit. And I take the exact same approach because we can with snatch and clean and jerk in the beginning, agreed. It just needs to be technique, technique, technique like crazy because I can also still teach them the squats and the pulls and that we can start progressing on. they
Yeah.
can start, because those don't take quite as long to figure out.
And yeah.
And so you get them to do a decent squat or anything like that. So strength training, you can start right away. And I think that almost needs to be like maybe the motivator for new athletes in the beginning
Yeah.
is, hey, we're going to be building up your strength through these simpler movements while we focus on all the technique for the snatch and clean and jerk.
Yeah.
And then once your technique gets better, you're going to see those two start merging together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I
and
think
so, go
I
ahead.
think also, as you've probably seen, I would say probably like 7 out of 10 lifters are their strength once they start squatting and pulling, it's going to go through the roof.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
very few lifters that are going to squat and pull and see very little gains
yeah, exactly.
on a simple program.
Yeah, so I think that's where like the motivation needs to be in the beginning for, those athletes is to be able to focus on just the technique of the lifts and then, see their strength increase, feel themselves, feel their backs getting stronger, feel their legs getting stronger through the accessory movements.
Yeah.
And then they can kind of find the motivation in the change in strength and probably physique through all the accessory work while just allowing them to be okay with spending 30 minutes working with an empty barbell or 40 kilos
Yeah.
tops on these lifts. And that's always a little bit of that's much easier for me to do with athletes that have no background of the
Hmm.
lifts because they're really open to that and they're motivated by the other movements.
Yeah.
That sometimes is a little hard with a an athlete that comes in from CrossFit because sometimes they're comfortable enough with the lifts, but their technique is all over the place.
Yeah.
And I think that they think that changing something in technique means that they're going to instantly have a bump in their numbers.
Yeah.
And that's not always the case. A lot of times if we change a
A bump
position,
backwards.
yeah, exactly. There's going to be a backtrack for a little while. We're now putting you in a position that's probably not as strong for you because you've been lifting in a shitty position for a while, which
Yep.
means you're stronger in that shittier position.
Yep.
So now when we put you in this stronger position, it's going to take a while to develop the strength in that area and to have it transfer back over to your lifts. And so, to keep them willing to have that little bit of a backslide is tough.
Yeah.
But the good thing is I do find that CrossFitters gain a lot in their squats and their pulls when they start doing it more often. And
Yeah.
so there's still like that, motivation of seeing, all right, this is the first time I've really done just a structured squat cycle and my squat jumped up, 10 kilos.
Yeah, and CrossFitters usually come in with good GPP already.
Yeah,
So even if you made them, do a single every day, they probably get stronger and hit a PR because
yeah, yeah,
they're used to doing 10s, 15s, and 20s in the squat.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and it's very similar to like a youth lifter. If you got a youth for the first time, most youth that we get don't come from a background of anything.
Mhm.
So what I usually do is, like you said, you give them, the strength work to kind of keep them motivated. With a youth lifter, I'll give them jumping work to keep them motivated.
Mm,
So we won't necessarily push the strength work. We'll gradually grow on it as long
yeah,
as positions work. But, one day we'll test their broad jump. And then next week we'll try to test it again and see if they could jump further.
that's
Uh,
cool.
Things like that is kind of what we'll do with our youth lifters. Give them small tasks to feel accomplished. So jumping and vertical
Yeah,
jumps and things like that.
I like that. Yeah, for a while there, and I'm still. It always comes back to me. I thought it'd be really cool just as a gym if like once a year I put together kind of like this combine type thing. So that way there's also, or even if it's biannual, something where there's like this measurable change.
Yeah,
And I kick myself, every now and then that I don't put my brand new lifters through something like that.
yeah,
Like I would love that if to put like my first, like as soon as they came in, yeah, test their broad jump, test their vertical, You can always test their squat and that other kind of stuff. But yeah, to show them in like, okay, now we've gone through this 12-week cycle, or we've gone through 6 months of doing weightlifting. Now let's retest and see what these other movements outside of just measuring snatch, clean and jerk, squat, deadlift, that kind of stuff. I
Yeah,
think it'd be
exactly.
interesting to test some of those athletic movements and to try to motivate them that way too. So it's not always about the numbers.
Yep.
Sometimes it's about seeing, hey, I've gotten way more explosive. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, even with the youth, doing some bodybuilding work and, a kid, a male athlete seeing, they grew a bicep,
Yeah,
things like
yeah,
that is awesome for a kid too. So
yeah. To say that aesthetics isn't motivating is just bullshit,
yeah,
because it
yeah,
is. You know,
it's definitely, you gotta look good in your singlet.
exactly, exactly. There's a confidence booster that comes with that.
Exactly. You got the confidence of lifting weights. You want to look good while you do it too.
Exactly.
So I also push to newer athletes too, like you said, the CrossFit athletes that you're changing their position and they might not be hitting the same weights as they're used to because they were in a bad position.
Hmm.
Um, I try to push something I learned from Norik Vardanian, which is technique PRs. If you
Oh,
hit
cool.
a 135 with crappy technique, you took 5 steps forward, but then we adjust some things and you hit a 135-pound snatch. I'm using pounds because of CrossFit.
Yeah, you're
Pound
good.
pound pound snatch, and you didn't walk forward and you hit it smooth. That's a PR. That's a technique
Yeah.
PR. So I try to push technique PRs with my CrossFitters.
Yeah, yeah. I love hearing that feedback every now and then from my lifters where they might not necessarily PR, but they hit their 100%, but they're like, but it was so much cleaner. It felt so much better. Like, I
Yeah.
think that is also motivating in knowing that now this weight that was, last time I folded and grinded and
Yeah.
pressed out, now I smoked it, because now we know too that that's probably a lift that we can actually do in competition.
Exactly.
you know
Yeah.
and and that's something that always drove me crazy in the gym, is when we start picking numbers and these athletes are putting down these like huge numbers, and I'm like, I've seen you take those lifts, there's no way
Yeah.
we're going to be able to take that as an opener. I was like,
Yeah.
that you
But
press it out
I make it every,
50%.
yeah, I make it every week with 5 steps running forward.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think those technique PR things are cool. Something that I've done a lot more of recently. I've always utilized Coach's Eye, but now I've been doing it a
Mhm.
lot more because of everybody having to train at home. And um, and I love that you can do the side by side comparisons on those.
Yeah, that is cool.
So even like on like week one of our programming, um, like I've been able to take a lift from somebody's first week of doing it all the way up until their third week of doing it, and putting those side by side and just showing how much better they've gotten, how much sharper they've gotten over the span of like 3 weeks.
Yeah, yeah. And
You
that
know?
usually helps people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's motivating enough just to see, oh wow, yeah, that looks a lot better now than it did just like a few weeks ago. And
Yeah.
so because it's really hard to see that progress in yourself, especially if you're doing like the same movements for a few weeks in a row. You're like, I've only put like 2 kilos on this complex. But then you go look at how you moved that first week of the complex compared to like the last week of it, and you're like, okay, but I also look a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. The end goal is to hit lifts on a platform.
Yeah,
Whether you're doing it for fun or doing it to compete, the end goal is to hit lifts on the platform. So you want platform looking lifts, most of the time at least.
yeah, as much as I love PRs in the gym, like the numbers that I and us coaches are always going to go off of is what are these athletes able to compete with?
Yeah,
That's those are really the only numbers that matter.
exactly.
So if you put 10 kilos on your clean and jerk this cycle, I still not really sure what we're going to go into competition with. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to bump your competition total 10 kilos.
Yeah,
You know,
especially if you did that 10-kilo PR in one day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly. If you haven't been progressively like yeah, if you haven't hit that number more than once in that cycle, you know, probably not going to compete with it, or it might be a third lift if you're
Yeah,
lucky.
yeah,
You know.
exactly, exactly.
Let's see. Yeah, we're doing pretty good on time. Let's go into some of these, some of the supplemental stuff that people use in weightlifting, like straps and no straps and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So let's start with that one. I think you also had a question about knee sleeves, but let's get into straps on whether athletes should be using it, when to use it. Is it something that's necessary, not necessary? What are your kind of thoughts on that?
I don't know if I have different thoughts. I've heard a lot of different theories on it, from international lifters to coaches in the U.S., and I kind of developed my own way of going about it, I guess. So I do believe in straps. First off, straps save your grip.
Yeah.
When you're doing weightlifting type volume training 5 days a week, 2 to 3 hours a day, um, you're taking a lot of lifts, and those bars can beat your hands up. So I do believe in straps to save your grip, especially early on in cycles where you're doing triples or, you
Mm-hmm.
know, even upwards of, fives, it
Yeah.
could be.
Yeah.
Um, so I do believe in using straps, because it can avoid the risk of your hands sliding out on the bar when you're doing multiple reps, or your hands getting beat up and you not being able to do your workout tomorrow or your workout
Mm-hmm.
3 days from now. So I do believe in using straps. Also believe in it too. I wouldn't give it to a newer lifter. I would not tell a newer lifter to use straps until
Yeah.
they're comfortable with bailing. Newer
Mm-hmm.
lifters, I don't believe, need to do it. Most newer lifters were probably not going to do high enough volume for you to need to do it. Um, but it is good to help develop and keep good technique through these higher volume phases. So you're not focusing on your grip strength or your hands being beat up. And you can focus on a good pull, keeping it close, finishing without worrying about your hands,
Yeah.
getting beat up. So I do believe, in using straps. As for when to get rid of them, I kind of stick to the theory and I use it for myself. I came from like a baseball background, so obviously baseball players, and I wrestled, we have really strong grip, and I also have big hands. So I get rid of my straps 3 weeks out. I start getting rid of them,
Mm-hmm.
or in the beginning of a peak. It depends how
Yeah.
short the peak is. I'll start with just pulls to kind of build up my hands. I'll do, my snap, not my dids, but my deadlifts, but my snatch pulls and my clean pulls. I'll get rid of the straps, in the start of the peak and just use, the hook grip.
Yeah.
Um, and then after that, I go full on, no straps on everything. Because you're mostly doing singles anyway, doubles
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
So it's really not going to beat up your hands. Plus, it'll get your hands used to hook gripping the bar. I don't believe using the hook grip often doesn't strengthen your hook grip. It it gets you comfortable using the hook grip, but it's not going to strengthen your grip. Doing no hook stuff will strengthen your grip, or grip exercises will strengthen your grip. Not just no hooking the whole time will strengthen your grip.
Yeah.
Um, the reason we use the no hook is because our grip's not strong enough to hold a bar that's going to spin in our hand.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. So the grip is a factor. Plus, I think it forces some technical changes too.
exactly.
Yeah.
So early on, I would use the straps, understand when you're comfortable to bail, use them. And then in the beginning of a peak or a few weeks out, get rid of them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my theory on it. And that's kind of what I tell the team. I have lifters that will switch daily. They'll
Yeah.
use the straps
Yeah. Yeah.
1 week and then the next week not use the straps, and
Yeah.
that's comfortable for them. I've even gone the route of on my deloads not using straps. It's a deload week. It's not going to be heavy. It's
Hmm.
probably low volume. So I'll even not use straps on deload weeks. I've done that. So I have another lifter who, totally got rid of the straps pretty much on any kind of lift and sticks with that because
Yeah,
he wants to feel comfortable, which is fine.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think there's a, a a benefit to learning how to properly use the straps because, like you said, I don't want their limiting factor in you know, yeah, if we're doing a snatch complex, but it's all from hanging positions, I don't want their limiting factor to
Yeah,
be them being able to hold on to the bar. And
exactly.
then if that becomes their limiting factor, they're probably going to end up kind of doing something weird in the lift, anyways. So I think just being able to examine what the goal of that lift is, and then determine whether the straps are beneficial for that goal.
Yeah,
So, like you said, if the goal is to probably increase your grip strength, then you're probably going to program no hook something anyways,
yeah,
or just grip strength training. But if your goal is to progressively, increase weight or to try to get more explosive, yeah, if you're doing like a hang power snatch for a set of five,
yeah,
we're probably trying to get you more explosive here. I'm not really worried about your grip, so put the straps on and be explosive.
exactly.
And I do think that there's benefits to saving your hands, and that's why I think a lot of pulls are done with straps.
Hmm.
So, getting around to the end of your workout where you've been, hook gripping and mashing on your thumb for 2 to 3 barbell movements already, and now you're over to pulls and you're mashing on your hands even more. Yeah, you can protect your hands a little bit by adding those straps. And to me, I think if we're doing pulls, especially if it's like a set of five or something like that, I want them to be able to pull as hard as they can on every single rep.
Yep.
So if they're like barely standing up their last rep because they're having trouble hanging on to the bar, then we're not getting any acceleration on the bar and they're
No.
not pulling as hard as they should.
Yep.
So I think adding those straps to some of those volume pulls are beneficial too, because the athlete will actually try to pull harder, which
Yeah,
is,
exactly.
a pet peeve of mine in pulls when they don't pull like they're actually trying to snatch it.
Yeah. Yeah, they go through the motions on it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of the straps. I do like what you said, and I totally agree. I don't like beginners using straps, and not only for the safety of what to do if the bar goes back behind them, but also because they're usually not comfortable with the hook grip yet, anyways,
Yep.
and they need to start hook gripping right from the get-go. Get
Yep.
comfortable with that, go through the uncomfortable phases of hook gripping. You're not going to be moving that much weight, so to hook grip your 40 50 kilo clean deadlifts is probably going to be okay,
Yeah.
and you're going to at least get your thumbs and hands kind of comfortable with that before we start trying to use the straps. So I think this can lead right into like knee sleeves as well. I think jumping right into wanting all of that stuff as a beginner athlete,
Yeah.
like I got to get some straps, I got to get some
The
wrist
the
wraps, some
guy
knee
that shows up
wraps.
with the best gear on the first day.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I got to have the best belt out there. And it's like, really? No, as a beginning lifter, you probably don't need any of
Any
that.
of it.
And we got to condition your joints and all that stuff to move some weight from the get go.
Yep.
So same thing with like knee sleeves and
Especially the
belts
belt.
and all that.
The,
I'm like, just none of that until I see you starting to really move some weight.
the belt, as like my lifters could tell you, is a huge pet peeve of mine. The belt.
Yeah.
People use it way too early and way too often.
Yeah.
And it's something that I always kind of have to critique, using a belt on a push press. Like, it's an accessory movement. You shouldn't be going that heavy that you need a belt for your push press or your
Yeah.
strict
Yeah.
press. Or you're warming up to squat and you threw on your belt for the bar.
Yeah, I know
Um,
that drives me crazy. I'm like, guys, like depending on the size of athlete, I'm like 80, 85%, not until then.
I'm about there too. I'm usually 75 to 80%. I'm the same
Yeah,
way. Same way.
yeah.
And it's just a pet peeve of mine. And people also people that get like maybe a little bit of a back injury or their
Hmm.
back hurts, they throw it on, and I'm like, you're being counterproductive,
Yeah,
what you're
yeah.
trying to do. So, or like doing overhead squats with a belt, another pet peeve of mine. Like you don't use the belt in the snatch, but you're going to use the
Yeah,
belt for your overhead squat.
yeah, I
So,
know.
um, yeah, the belt's a huge pet peeve of mine.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think it just becomes, like to the athlete's benefit, I understand sometimes if they're using it as maybe a tactile cue for bracing,
Yeah,
but to me, I'm like, well, then that just means you need to kind of practice bracing.
exactly.
If you have to have that belt, like I agree, like sometimes I could teach somebody how to expand into a belt and use that as a tactile cue, but then it's going to be like, okay, now take the belt off and show me do the same thing,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. Let's learn to brace with it, but then take it off and continue to brace with it
Yeah,
off.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I actually do program occasionally, no belt squats,
Yeah.
especially with my strong squatters, just to kind of bring down their squat a little bit.
Hmm.
And I think it actually helps the jerk. I've seen huge benefits in people's jerk when we program
Mm,
no belt front squats. It
yeah,
kind of helps them feel the weight more,
yeah,
and they when you're standing up a heavy clean and you're holding that jerk, understanding what it's going to feel like is a huge plus.
yeah. Yeah, that was a tactic I used when I was weightlifting, and well when I was moving a little more weight around. Uh, is I would always warm up, and it wouldn't be until my last, or depending on where I was at, my last two clean and jerks that I would that I would put my belt on before my opener.
Yeah,
And part of that was because I kind of wanted to feel a heavy weight without the belt, and then put the belt on right before that last lift. Take my last lift on the warm up platform and be like, okay, now that one felt really fucking solid,
yeah,
and I know I
exactly.
can land it. And so almost feeling that change of like, this is getting heavy, this is getting hard, and then putting the belt on and then going, it was almost like I could trick myself a little bit.
Yeah,
Be like, okay,
exactly.
now I'm ready for this opener. Now I felt really solid on that last lift. Went from feeling a little heavy to feeling like rock solid, and I'm good to go.
Yeah, I'll do the same with jerks out of the blocks. I try to put
Mm,
it on at the last second just so I can feel the weight.
yeah,
Um, I struggle with a jerk, so if I can feel confident in the jerk, it feeling
yeah,
light on me, it'll help.
yeah, yeah. So I think the belt can really be used as kind of, a good, motivator sometimes in that sense too.
Yeah.
But yeah, but then there's some people that are just like it's like them wearing a shirt. They just have to have their belt on the whole fucking time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, come on. And
Yeah.
so like you were saying, like me, I don't let them use belts during like our conditioning or hypertrophy phases. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, I want the core to have more time under tension. I want you to get a lot stronger.
Yeah.
So until we're really starting to hit like some rep maxes and things like that, you don't need the belt. You don't need the
Yep.
belt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Um,
Um,
yeah, so as for like knee wraps and knee sleeves, I prefer the knee wraps. I think I started with the knee sleeves. I think most
mhm.
people usually start with knee sleeves or at least no sleeves and then go to wraps.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll talk about the differences. So like a knee wrap, you can tighten on your own manually. You can gauge how tight you want them. The benefits of both of them, they both keep your knees warm, which is a good thing. Um, the knee wraps, you'll probably, depending on how tight you put them, you'll get more of a little of a bounce out of the hole
Hmm.
compared to like a knee sleeve. The benefits of a knee sleeve, you can slide them on, slide them off. A knee sleeve, the reason I don't like them is they loosen up after, a few
Yeah.
months of wearing them. They get loose and then there's nothing, they don't do anything for your knees.
Yeah. The knee
Um,
sleeves always feel great, right? When you take them out of the package,
or,
you're
or
like, I
wash
feel
them
like I
and then
want to
dry them.
squat. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I do prefer the knee wraps. Knee wraps for me on the snatch, I barely even wrap them. They're pretty
Mhm.
light,
Yeah.
just to keep the knee warm because you don't want to catch a snatch and bounce out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
for cleans, I will put them a little tighter because you do want a little bit of that help coming out of that hole. And
Hmm.
same for squats, I'll put them a little tighter.
Yeah.
But mainly they're just used for keeping your knees warm, and uh, I prefer the knee sleeves, but I mean the knee wraps. But my fiance uses the knee sleeves; she likes those. So
Yeah. Me coming up in weightlifting, I just used like ace bandages,
yeah,
but I
it's the
wrapped
same
them the
thing.
exact same way. But I was the same thing. I would put them on pretty loose, or sometimes I would just snatch without them, or I'd
Yeah,
put them on really loose in competition. And then I liked clean and jerk because I could tighten them up much tighter because recovering out of the squat is where I struggled. So I could get them real tight and try to get that bounce. And then between lifts, I could tighten them up again and again and again. And I also liked it because I didn't like the feeling of something being across my kneecap. And so I would tighten really, really tight above the
oh, okay,
kneecap, and then I would wrap over the kneecap, but not as tight.
yeah,
Then I'd go really, really tight below the kneecap. And for me, that felt much better on my knees, not having that pressure there, too.
yeah,
I've never really experienced or worked with knee sleeves that much because I always use those wraps, and then I just kind of got comfortable with them. But I do think that the benefit of being able to keep your knees warm is very beneficial, and I think, and plus with knee wraps, knee sleeves, and belts and all that, like you'll probably move more weight.
yeah,
So I think when it comes to competition, my thing is like if you can clean and jerk more weight with knee sleeves, knee wraps, and a belt, I'm like, then put it all on.
yeah, exactly.
So I'm like, to me, it's not controversial. I'm like, if you're able to squat more weight with it, if you're able to clean and jerk more weight, I'm like, do it. Wrap up as tight as you need to. Put those knee
Yeah,
sleeves on. Put your belt on. Tighten it up. I'm like, use all that equipment, but also understand the benefits of not using it when training. You
exactly,
know.
exactly.
Um, and I think it's cool now because the new uniform rules allow people to wear compression pants and sleeves and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And so I think there's a lot of people that just used the wraps as a reason, like a way to keep their legs warm, their knees warm, or stuff like that. So I think there's going to be some. I think people being able to use those compression pants and things like that now in competition. I wonder if we start seeing less of the wraps and sleeves too.
yeah. I took the leap to the pants, kind of because I had to at the American Open. I didn't, I didn't bring my competition gear to compete in.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So so I did wear the pants, remember? And
Yeah,
I like the pants. I think they keep my hips warm. I'm 32, so I'm not that young. Um, they do keep my hips warm, so I did like the pants. I like that they allow that now.
yeah, yeah, that's cool.
Plus, it
Um,
keeps the bleeding on the bar from happening so
exactly.
much.
Yeah, yeah. No, a lot of my athletes, once they kind of figured that ruling out, because I mean, I'd say most of our athletes are training in compressions.
Yeah, same
And
here.
so to be able to go out there and feel like they're in that similar atmosphere, I think helps too.
And being in New York, you're really only not training in probably pants or longer compression pants,
Mhm.
only for like 2 months out of the year, maybe 3 months out of the year. So we mainly train with some kind of longer compression on anyway. So it's nice to kind of get that, same feeling in competition.
Yeah, we don't have the issue of staying warm here in
Yeah,
Texas.
yeah,
We're usually stripping off clothes by the time summer rolls around.
yeah, exactly.
Um, let's see. Well, we're down to about the last 5 minutes
All right.
before we get kicked off. What's y'all's plans for the for the rest of the year? Do y'all have any set plans, or probably everything's loose plans right now?
Yeah, everything's loose. I would like to hope they are gonna be set eventually.
Yeah,
Um, so our plan first is, get everyone back into the gym, whenever that is gonna be. But our first meet that we wanna go to that we're hoping runs is the New York State Championships
hmm,
in October. It's basically it it's basically the second year running it. They've had it years past, but kind of got rid of it, and they kind of developed it last year again, and it was a big hit.
cool.
So big that now people have to bid for it, which is cool.
Yeah,
So we just hope it continues to grow. I have nothing to do with it, but I hope it continues to grow because I'm going to send my full team every time, and I want teams to beat us. I want to know what
yeah,
I'm not doing and
yeah.
what I need to do better at. So we'll be going to that. It's in the middle of October in Auburn, New York, up by Syracuse, so 4 hours north of us.
That's not bad.
So we'll be going to that, sending a full team. I'd like to, win male and female this year. We won male last year. Um, and then after that, the meet in December, I don't even know what to call
Yeah,
it. Uh,
yeah. The national finals.
the national, there we go, the national finals meet, which will be cool because, like the guy said that you had on, I think yesterday, it kind of gives us some insight on how it's going to run next year. The
Yeah,
Nationals week, it's funny because I voted for that when they put the survey out.
hmm,
I voted for that because I think that's a good idea.
agreed.
Not just because it saves us money from traveling so much, it brings everyone together on
Yeah,
one week.
yeah.
It gets the youth to see the the junior people, and then the junior people to see the senior people lift, and I think that's pretty cool.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah, I voted for that too because I was really excited about that, just merging all that together. I think that's really motivating for all athletes.
yeah, exactly. So the national finals in December is our one that we're planning for, and we're looking right now. We have about six guaranteed going.
Cool.
Um, yeah, six, no, seven guaranteed going. We have one youth and six other American Open or national level going, and then we have
Awesome, dude.
right now we have a few maybes, depending on how everything goes. So we should. Our goal at the beginning of the year was to send a team to a national meet, and it looks like hopefully we'll be able to do that this year.
That'd be awesome, man. That's huge.
Yeah, so
Really cool.
that's a big goal, especially in New York, not being known for weightlifting essentially. So and us only really having a gym open since October. So that's a huge goal for us, and hopefully we can do it.
Cool, man. Well,
What
I
about
appreciate you
yourself?
getting. Well, we're down to about our last minute, so right now our goal is to we were scheduled for AO3, so I'm not sure if that's going to continue or if we're going to really try to plan for that one. So right now it's primarily AO finals and nationals,
Cool.
and then just hope that we can kind of get back onto some kind of normal schedule come next year.
Yeah.
So no big plans. We're supposed to host a meet in September, but again, I don't even know how that's going to go. We had to cancel our April meet, and I had to roll all those registrations into September. I don't even know how September's going to go. So right
Yeah.
now, really the only set plan is the AO Finals Nationals, and then kind of start planning for next year.
All right, dude.
All right, man. Well, it's good catching up. Let's do this again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks.
All right, later, man.
Later.